hey, welcome back to Mike Seibert Radio. I am your host, and welcome for this Riding Carpool episode talking about Thor Love and Thunder, the fourth film in the Thor franchise within the Marvel Cinematic Universe movie franchise thing. I mean, this gets really complicated when you start parsing out the movies and the shows and just kind of the larger oeuvre of the Marvel movies. So it is Thursday morning, the day after I saw an advanced screening. The movie comes out this weekend, so this is a early, spoiler-free review. So I'm going to talk about the movie just kind of like in broad strokes. I didn't want to talk about it last night, fresh from watching the movie. One, because I was hungry. I had to stop by Jack in the Box and get me a Jack Munchie meal. I enjoyed me a spicy chicken sandwich, and really I was in the mood for the tacos. I just wanted the tacos and the halvesy fries. Jack Munchie meal rules, by the way. I mean, but you know inflation is out of control when the Jack Munchie meal jumps from $6 to $8, but that's neither here nor there. Also, since this is like, you know, kind of trying to capture the moment in the bottle, it is Thursday morning. It is July 7th, and I want to wish a very happy birthday to my lovely wife, Lucky. And I am just so grateful for the love and support that she gives me, not just in life, but also for my silly hobbies that enable me to chat with you here. I think without her encouragement, I would have I either stopped doing this a long time ago, or probably wouldn't have even started to begin with, because, you know, she's the one that says, like, hey man, why don't you take a class during the summer at the Green River College. So anyway, I just wanted to wish her a happy birthday. And so yeah, so all right, so Thor. My thoughts are very mixed, and I'm very mixed on this movie. Whereas, say, like a Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, I was largely positive on. In fact, I really liked it when I saw that preview screening, and I keep telling you, and I keep telling myself that I might do a full review episode. And as we keep getting further and further away, the likelihood of that is dwindling, because now that the movie's been out for a while, and now that folks have been talking about it, and all of the memes and all the articles and all the think pieces, I don't know, maybe I don't have as much to say about it as I initially thought. But yeah, I mean, maybe I'll come back to that. But with Thor, I feel, oh man, I mean, like I said, I'm just very mixed on it. First of all, I guess this is going to be a largely positive review. I liked it fine, but I didn't love it. It didn't blow my skirt up. It didn't blow my hair back. And I feel like it's actually a step backwards from the forward progression from Thor Ragnarok, the previous movie. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess a handful of things. First of all, I don't think there's anything that's not in the trailers that's in this movie. And what I mean by that is that the movie that you see in the trailer is exactly the movie that this is. Whereas Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, the trailer makes that seem like it's a very different movie. Like it's they are very clever to make it seem like it is a response and the consequences of the events of Spider-Man No Way Home. But once you watch that Doctor Strange movie, you find out immediately that it is not. I was listening to a podcast recently, Blank Check, I've talked about it before, hosted by Griffin Newman, who is the voice of Orko in the Masters of the Universe Revelation Netflix show. But they do really cool, incredible deep dives on their whole gimmick is they do mini-series on directors, and they go through the entire director's filmography. Well, they just recently capped off their Sam Raimi series, and the culmination of that was the Doctor Strange episode. And one of the topics that they talked about that I didn't even really consider is because of COVID, the Marvel schedule has been like shuffled all over the place. Like, all the TV shows have come out of order. The movies have come out of order. And so part of, I think, the frustration from not just hardcore MCU fans, but also casual fans, is kind of like this sense of where we're going, what are we building towards? And I think a lot of that comes from the disjointed release. And to say nothing about like reshoots and things like that. Apparently, Doctor Strange was originally supposed to come out prior to WandaVision and even prior to Spider-Man. So wrap your heads around that one. That almost kind of makes no sense when you think about it for too long. But apparently the post-COVID the movie was significantly reworked. Okay, I'm gonna stop because now I realize that I've talked for several minutes in this Thor review about Doctor Strange. So I'm either going to do an episode or I'm not. But regardless, I need to talk about Thor. The thing that I like about this movie is it takes the sensibilities that the director Taika Waititi brought to Thor Ragnarok and cranks it up to 11. It's bright, it's colorful, it's fun in a lot of ways. The things that I liked about this movie, I liked a lot, but there's also a hollowness that even now, the morning after seeing the movie, I'm still kind of trying to wrap my head around, trying to articulate. It's not cynical in the way that other entries into the Marvel Cinematic Universe are, like we're trying to just be episodic and kind of fit things into the latest chapter and do a lot of heavy lifting story-wise. The thing I point to is Avengers: Age of Ultron. That is less a movie as it is a storytelling conduit. That it's kind of interesting as these stories progress how I don't want to say iconic. That's not the word but there's so much that sprang from that movie that people keep going back to it and saying it's essential. Oh, essential is probably the word that I'm looking for. But it's because of like the things that happen or the track that's laid, not necessarily because of the movie or because of what's good about it. So I feel like this movie also kind of suffers from that same perhaps disjointed release. It's kind of blown me away that this feels like the perhaps I was going to say it's the first movie that I feel like is a direct follow-up to Avengers Endgame. And that's not accurate because that second Spider-Man movie, that Spider-Man Far From Home, that directly picks up after the events of Avengers Endgame. But after that, it's a whole lot of all over the place, where you've got Black Widow that's a prequel. You got Shang-Chi that is kind of off by itself. You got Doctor Strange that kind of occupies a weird in-between space. So it's like a sequel to the follow-up stuff to Avengers Endgame. But I think that Thor Love and Thunder is the second movie, or the first movie in a while, to pick up threads directly from Avengers Endgame, and that he's hanging around with the Guardians of the Galaxy, and it's trying to pick up a lot of the threads from the Thor character. And speaking on Thor, and it kind of speaks to what my axe to grind with this movie is, but like Thor, I think of all of the first generation Avengers characters. So you got, Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Hulk, Black Widow, Hawkeye. I think Thor is the character that has the most character development, has the broadest character arc, but is also the most disjointed. Like, he shows up in like a half dozen movies before they figure out what to do with him. And I feel like Taika Waititi cracked the code in Thor Ragnarok, in that, like, he can be, funny and goofy. And then in the Russo brothers' latter Avengers movie, the Infinity War and the Endgame, they propel that even further and really get into some deep meta mental health stuff. And I like what they did with the Thor character, especially in Endgame. With themes of depression and how he deals with it, and how this seemingly immortal being reconciles the catastrophic events and the utter failure of the Avengers and of himself. It's some very interesting dramatic narrative that I really liked. That I really liked what they did with Thor. And that's why this movie is so frustrating, because it takes almost all of that and throws it away. Like, almost immediately. I mean, again, it's right there in the trailer. It's like, goes from dad bod to god bod. And, it's a real, how Stella got her groove back. And, he's doing, like, cartoon CrossFit. And, I mean, again, I never expected for Chris Hemsworth to run around in a fat suit in his own movie. That's silly. In fact, I thought it was brave enough that he's in that fat suit for the entirety of Avengers Endgame. I thought that was an interesting choice. I never would have thought that they would have gone there and let the character do that. But it just feels like the character has gone back to being kind of a dummy. And I don't like Thor being a complete dummy. It just feels weirdly disingenuous. There's a version of Thor that Chris Hemsworth has played already where, sure, he's kind of a himbo, but he's not a complete dummy, both intellectually and emotionally. And I feel like that's the Thor that we see in this particular movie. But I want to talk about tone, because I mean the thing with Thor Ragnarok is that it really is kind of two movies kind of squished together. And I think you get some like tonal mismatches, but the stuff that's fun is really fun, and the stuff that's serious kind of works also. It has that balance between goofy and serious, where there is it's not completely earnest, but there is a self-awareness that I kind of respect. This movie, on the other hand, I think learns some of the wrong lessons, and it's just goofy. It's silly at times, and goofy at others, and what it does is it kind of cuts itself off at the knees when it tries to have like real drama and real stakes. It doesn't work. Like, one of the things that they establish in that Ragnarok is that Cate Blanchett's character, Hela, is legit scary and is a credible threat. And I like Christian Bale's performance in this movie as Gore the God Butcher. I think he's doing some cool stuff, and I think it's a cool performance. But likewise, though, I don't think it belongs in this movie. It really reminds me of that first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, where you have Ronan the Accuser as your seemingly main villain, who does not belong in that movie. It's like he is literally like a refugee from a different movie. And that's what Christian Bale's villain character feels like to me here. He feels like he belongs in a different movie. Because when they try to do, like, you know, serious and scary, it doesn't work. But there's some other stuff that Christian Bale does with the performance that again, kind of that I kind of like. It's like he, in a weird way, kind of taps into some of that Heath Ledger Joker energy a little bit. I'm not saying he's like, you know, a cackling maniacal villain or whatever, but he does some of like the kind of like quietly scary stuff that I think is really cool, but I also don't think it belongs in this movie, where it's just like a goofy, fun romp. And I think where the frustration with the overall Marvel Cinematic Universe trajectory here in this Phase 4 is a whole lot of where are we going? What are we building towards? And that mentality is a double-edged sword for me in terms of like being frustrated. Because like on one hand, I advocate for, can't a movie just be a movie? Does it have to lay track for a half dozen other movies? But by the same token, I think because we've been spoiled as an audience on the formula, on the MCU formula, that there is somewhat of an expectation that we're going somewhere. And, you know, between like the weird cosmic stuff from Eternals and the weird multiverse stuff from Doctor Strange and the Loki TV show, it feels very rudderless. Now, I had a discussion with some friends recently where they were kind of mad, indignant about the trajectory of Phase 4. It's like, oh man, we're not really building anything. And I reminded them, I was like, well, keep in mind or try to remember that Phase 1, you know, so like starting with Iron Man and, you know, Incredible Hulk and Captain America, it wasn't right away that they were building towards Thanos. That kind of came a little later. In fact, they were barely building towards Avengers. It's like it's something that they landed on eventually. I don't know when. I mean, probably after Iron Man became a hit. But I think folks forget and take for granted that these movies weren't seeding sequels from jump. That was something that came later after the MCU was a legit hit. But then when you get into your Phase 2 is all building towards stuff, and I think at the cost of individual movies. And it's interesting because, you know, I've talked in different places about like sequel legislation and not, you know, knowing which movie is which. Like in the Iron Man series, you got an Iron Man 2, and an Iron Man 3. But like those are the only movies in the MCU that have that are numbered sequels. And I think that's very deliberate, and it kind of makes sense when you think about it, because these movies are not sequels of each other. They're sequels of the overall episodic Marvel Cinematic Universe. So, yeah, Iron Man 2 is a sequel to Iron Man. But Iron Man 3 is a sequel to the Avengers. And somewhere along the way, somebody figured out that naming convention, and that's where you get, like, you know, I don't even know if we're using colons. So, like, I mean, like, I think Thor Love and Thunder is just called Thor Love and Thunder. I don't think it's Thor Love and Thunder. It's a real Star Trek Into Darkness situation there. Or they, you know, have fun with it, and it's clever with, you know, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I think that's a cool way to do that title legislation. But that's one of the overall problems with these movies, is that they're not cohesive or coherent within themselves. If you try to watch the Captain America movies, so you got yourself a First Avenger, a Winter Soldier, and a Civil War, if you try to watch them by themselves, it will make no goddamn sense. Again, the only franchise you can really get away with that is Iron Man, and even then, if you haven't seen the Avengers, you're woefully unprepared for Iron Man 3. So, and I think that's kind of the same thing, sort of, with Thor Love and Thunder. I think one of the things that struck me as interesting is that it's not what I just got done talking about. It feels like, with the exception of a couple plot threads, and again, obviously picking up from some of the events of Avengers Endgame, it does feel like a sequel to Thor Ragnarok. Now, again, take the Thor movies. You got Thor the First, and again, Thor the Dark World #2. That's very much an Iron Man 3 situation. If you haven't seen Avengers, it's not going to make no damn sense. Thor Ragnarok, on the other hand, I think is a pretty darn terrific standalone. Like, I think the only plot thread it picks up is Thor going off into space, again, from that goddamn Age of Ultron, ironically enough. So, oh yeah, and his quest for Infinity Stones, but then, I mean, that just gets, like, thrown away in a line. But this Love and Thunder feels like it's a sequel to that Ragnarok. I feel like I could watch those kind of back to back. No, you still need those Avengers movies in there. Apologies for trying to legislate this while I'm trying to find a parking spot at work here. My mind just keeps tumbling on it about, like, I thought one of the positives of Thor Love and Thunder was that it was kind of self-contained, but yeah, it really kind of isn't. You need the Infinity War and the Endgame for this to work. So all right, so let's kind of talk about this this movie here, because I feel like I've talked about everything but the movie. As I said before, the stuff that I liked. It's bright, it's colorful, it's the exact opposite of those dour superhero movies that I don't especially like. So I think that's fun. I think the use of music is good to okay. And it's all there in the trailer. But it got me to thinking about how rock music really kind of is intertwined in the MCU. And I think it's something that they don't use well enough. And I think when they use it well, it works. But there are other times that it's too much. So rock music has heavy rock music. I mean, I got some metalheads that are rolling their eyes. It's like, you're going to talk about AC/DC and say it's heavy music. It's not. But from jump, from what Jon Favreau was doing with Iron Man the First, and having AC/DC be so intrinsic to the sound of that first Iron Man movie, and pushing that even further in Iron Man 2, where literally the soundtrack album for Iron Man 2 doubles as an AC/DC greatest hits. I'm a lifelong fan of AC/DC, and I think the track mix is kind of weird. There's some weird exclusions and inclusions, but you're gonna have that with any kind of greatest hits album anyway. But it's a fine enough compilation for what they're trying to accomplish. But my point being is that like that celebration of that interconnectivity between music and the movie that template has been there from the start. And it kind of got dropped until James Gunn picked it up for Guardians of the Galaxy, where that became a celebration of obscure at best, forgotten at worst catalog songs. Where suddenly, like, I mean, even now, I hear Blue Suede on the radio. We're still doing Ooga Chakas, several years later after Guardians of the Galaxy. And I thought that's it's a great soundtrack, and it's a terrific incorporation of music into the movie. But then, this might be unpopular, I don't care for the way the music is used in Guardians of the Galaxy 2. I feel like it's too much. It's too elbow nudgy, to the point where lyrics of the song are literally plot points of the movie. Like, the lyrics of the song Brandy are integral to the plot of Guardians of the Galaxy 2, and I think it's just too much. And I think James Gunn was swinging too hard with the song choices and how he used them. I think he was a little high on his own supply for Guardians 2. But then it gets dropped again, and it doesn't, that vibe, that aesthetic, that use of music doesn't get picked up again until Thor Ragnarok, when Taika Waititi uses the Led Zeppelin Immigrant Song, and uses it very well. Those two sequences, when it comes up, or maybe it's three, I haven't seen the movie for a while, they legit rock. And it's a terrific use of a song that they paid a whole lot of money to use, I am sure. And it helps establish the tone and the vibe of what the movie is. And I feel like Thor Love and Thunder takes that and pushes it even further in a good way. Instead of using Led Zeppelin, instead it's a celebration of Guns N' Roses. Thor Love and Thunder is a celebration of Guns N' Roses the way that Iron Man is a celebration of AC/DC. And I appreciated that, and I like that. And I think the songs that they use them pretty well. I don't know how I feel about the trailers using the music so extensively, because, like, in a certain way, it's kind of a spoiler. Like, you go back to that trailer for Iron Man the First, and there is no AC/DC in sight. Iron Man 2, on the other hand, completely different story, but still, it was, for me, I remember watching Iron Man 1, and the AC/DC kicking in, I'm like, what? I remember being really blown away. And, one of the ones where, like, I squeezed my wife's knee, just like, oh man, AC/DC and Iron Man, I really like this. It really connected with me. But yeah, no, I think the use of the music is really good here. So I guess, I don't know, I can't really talk about the plot too much, but basically, it picks up on some of the threads from the previous movies, and I don't know. It is a very straightforward adventure. Like, Christian Bale's villain, Gore the God Butcher, it has a villain origin story that is very typical. Not particularly interesting. Or at least in terms of groundbreaking, but it doesn't necessarily need to. it's fine. It's some good Batman villain stuff where you have like a tragic villain, and I do like that. And so yeah, so it feels like, I don't know. I don't want to say it's lazy, but the movie just feels like it's just kind of going through the motions to the point where I kind of found myself a little bored. Like there are some action sequences that are genuinely exciting. There is a sequence where the color palette changes. And, because I said one of the strengths of this movie is how colorful it is. Everything is bright and colorful. And there is a sequence of the movie where it becomes desaturated. And I swear we're watching Zack Snyder's Justice League. It's Justice League by way of Sin City. But I think it's a sequence that is really, really cool. But it's not enough for me to hang my hat on. It's I think I forgot more about this movie as soon as I left it. I was hoping that sleeping on it would kind of like have some of that stuff congeal and solidify in my brain, and it just really hasn't. So really, when I think about Thor Love and Thunder, I just kind of think about what I've already seen in the trailers, because my God, those trailers give you everything that's good in the movie. All of the punchlines, all of the jokes. There's nothing left by the time you actually watch the movie. That's not to say that the movie is bad. I think folks that like this stuff will like it quite a bit. So who is this for? Well, it's for you. I don't dislike this movie. I like it fine. I'm not going to be in a rush to go watch it again. But that's not saying a lot for my personal individual experience, because I can't remember the last time I watched a Marvel movie more than once. So I mean that it isn't necessarily a criticism. So I think the folks that are critical of the Marvel movies and like the increasingly stale formula, I think those folks are kind of proven right with this movie. I think the Marvel fans, the diehards, or I don't know, I guess the Snyder Bros of the MCU that were disappointed with the lack of build up to other stuff in Doctor Strange will also be disappointed with this as well. The movie doesn't necessarily make a great case for itself as a important chapter in the MCU. And therein lies the rub of my criticism, because I'm critical of these movies when they feel like they're just a middle chapter of a larger saga. But then I'm also critical when a movie just kind of tries to stand on its own while picking up on threads from other movies. So I don't know what way I want to have it. And that's why this discussion might come across as a little disjointed and maybe a little frustrating, because I don't know what to make of it. So I guess to round out, let me talk about some of the performances. I've talked about Chris Hemsworth extensively. Again, it's a real step backwards for me. I think he's got a natural charisma to him that I think is kind of missing here, because they're really trying to recontextualize him as a Dumbo to the movie's detriment. It's and I think it does a disservice to what they were doing with the character in the earlier movies, when they were dealing with depression and anxiety and really Thor being kind of a vessel for us to talk about mental health in these movies, and they just kind of done an about face on that, and it's really disappointing. But he's fun. I mean, he's charming. So I mean, it is both ways, and If you have a significant other that you're taking to this movie, you get treated to a wonderful extended shot of Chris Hemsworth bear buns. You get some juicy bear buns in this movie, which I ain't gonna complain about that. But the character I haven't talked about at all so far is Natalie Portman returning as Dr. Jane Foster in this movie, now the Mighty Thor, from the comics. And I totally forgot to make this confession earlier in the discussion, but we are really getting to a point in the MCU movies where it's moving beyond material that I have read from the comic books. Like, I thought it was pretty cool when they did the Winter Soldier, because I was very much into that Captain America run from Ed Brubaker and Steve Epting. Loved that series, and I loved how they incorporated elements of that into the movie. And I started feeling this way like right around Black Panther, where it's like, oh man, we're getting into stuff I haven't read, because I haven't read mainstream Marvel Comics for 5 years, maybe longer. I think it was around Civil War II when I decided to punch out. And I think I still was reading like a couple individual titles at the time, but I think like the overall mainstream Marvel universe, I jumped ship on. So like eventually when they get to Secret Invasion, I'll be there for that, because I was here for that. But anyway, yeah, like so my knowledge of the books is dwindling, and they're going to get to a point where they're going to get into stuff that I've never experienced and have never read. I've never read the Ms. Marvel comics, but I've started watching that series on the Disney Plus. Really good. It's cute, it's fun. A friend of mine called it Nick Kids for Marvel, and I say, sure, that's fine. I like it. It's very sweet. It's and it's a lot of fun. Anyway, go check out Ms. Marvel on the Disney Plus. But I have never been a huge fan of Thor in the comics. I've never followed his solo title ever. I mean, even like the iconic Walt Simonson stuff. I think the only run of Thor I picked up from the comics was the Michael Avon Oeming run, the which tied into like Avengers Disassembled. Like it was the ironically enough, the Ragnarok storyline, where they kind of picked up some of that and threw it into the Ragnarok movie. But that was just because like I was a huge fan of Brian Michael Bendis at the time, who was doing Avengers Disassembled. And I was a huge fan of their book, Powers. So anyway, that's the only reason why I picked up those Thor comics. So I didn't pick up any of the J. Michael Straczynski stuff, which kind of also went into Thor Ragnarok. And I haven't read a stitch of the Jason Aaron stuff with Esad Ribic. I haven't read any of that stuff with Gore the God Butcher, and I certainly haven't read any of the stuff dealing with Jane Foster as the Mighty Thor. So this is all new territory for me, and I can't sharpshoot how close any of it is to the comics because I haven't read any of it. I do think it's an interesting coup to bring Natalie Portman back into the MCU. I would imagine that they paid her a princely sum, probably, but I don't know. I don't know if I have time to kind of get into the Natalie Portman stuff because, like, unfortunately, I still dip in on channels that I shouldn't be, see, I don't even want to drop names because like I don't want you to check out their stuff. I kind of check out kind of right-wing chud creators so you don't have to. I kind of take that bullet for you. But like there's this one guy who's always bitching about the quote-unquote MCU, very misogynistic stuff, and is always railing against and is critical anything that has to do with promoting powerful women in these shows and movies. It's exhausting. It's ugly, but I think I check it out just to kind of get that other perspective. But some of that stuff kind of worms into my subconscious when I'm watching this, because I feel like Natalie Portman is brought in as the Mighty Thor to show that she's a better Thor than Thor is. And that kind of makes me crinkle my nose a little bit. There's way more nuance to it than that, but just that one sentence there, like I said, kind of gives me pause. She's fine in her performance. There is a specific reason why she the hammer calls to her, and she's imbued with the power of Thor, that I won't spoil, but apparently it is a thing from the comics, which I think is very interesting. But another problem that comes up is one of continuity. And it's in the trailer, and so there's a thing where like Thor and Mighty Thor, Jane Foster, are talking, and they were talking about like how long they've been broken up, and he says like it's been like 8 years. So what I don't know is when this movie takes place. I don't know how this accounts for the events of Avengers Infinity War. Like, was she blipped? Was she not? I don't know. It doesn't say one way or the other. I'm assuming not, but it doesn't say. So, time just goes very odd in this movie, and how it's placed and where it fits in sequentially. Ultimately, this is a movie about, well, love and thunder. It's there in the title, and their relationship, I think, is supposed to be the engine that makes it go. But I'm beginning to think that this is a Natalie Portman problem, because, like, one of the things I said about Star Wars: Attack of the Clones is that, oh man, you wouldn't believe the romance story in there, the romance between Padmé Panda Bear and Padme and Anakin Skywalker. You wouldn't believe it. The romance is unbelievable. As in, you don't believe it. And granted, it's just because they're both planks of wood. They're very two wooden performances. And that's kind of the same thing here. I don't buy their romance. And I think that's kind of a problem with the movie. I think she's capable enough in the action scenes. I'm not even going to get into the thing with her buff arms, because again, like these right-wing chud creators have been like trying to debunk that. Like apparently there's some behind the scenes footage where like her muscles were supposedly like CGI enhanced. I don't care. It's like, if she got super buff, fine. If she didn't, fine. I don't care. It's not the big deal that these assholes are making it out to be. Whatever. Tessa Thompson is just kind of snoozing through this movie as Valkyrie. She was a standout character in Thor Ragnarok. The movie doesn't know what to do with her here. She's fine. I mean, I like that character and I like her performance, but she doesn't have enough. I mean, there's a sequence of the movie where she's literally shown being bored, and to me that is exactly what Valkyrie's contribution to the movie is. Taika Waititi returns as the voice of the computer-generated rock monster Korg, and I have had enough. I've had enough. I think my appetite for the quirky Taika Waititi and even kind of James Gunn aesthetic, where we're just being goofy and silly and zany, I think I've kind of I've had my fill. I think I'm kind of tired of it. Because one of the criticisms of the Marvel Cinematic Universe is that it is so quippy, it is so jokey, nothing serious, and there's a sequence early on where a lot of this is narrated by Korg. Some of it is funny because it's in his quirky Kiwi affectation, and but other times it's just I think what I find frustrating or irritating is the nonchalance that, kind of like a postmodern aloofness towards past events, because like there's a montage of this is a mild spoiler, but like how it talks about the events leading up to this movie, including the stuff in Avengers Endgame and including stuff in the other movies. It's very glib in the way that it treats characters that aren't part of the franchise anymore. And I don't know, that kind of that hit me the wrong way, made me crinkle up my nose. But again, it's kind of that postmodern dismissive humor where, nothing is real, nothing is important, and nothing matters. Very, very nihilistic in a weird kind of way. Almost a dark humor type of thing, a black humor type of thing, but also not really. I can't explain it. I call it the Rick and Morty effect, but I don't watch that show, so I don't really know if that's accurate or not. But yeah, it's just it's glib. I think to use a word on that, but like he's in the movie for too much, and it feels exhausting. It feels to me like when Quentin Tarantino inserts himself in his own movies. Most offensively, of course, is like the entire fourth act of Django Unchained, where it's unwelcomed, unnecessary, and irritating. And that's kind of how I feel about the Korg performance. I talked about Christian Bale already. I think he's very good. I think he's very menacing, and but he doesn't belong in this movie. He needs to go hang out with Lee Pace, Ronan the Accuser, and they need to go find a movie that they actually belong in, because he doesn't belong here. The tone doesn't fit. Russell Crowe is in this movie as Zeus, and it's interesting. He makes a performance choice that I was very annoyed with at first. But then as the performance goes on, there is some flashes of Russell Crowe. You get a little bit of Gladiator, Russell Crowe. You get a little bit of L.A. Confidential. There's a simmering intensity that you eventually get to see, and I was like, oh, okay. But the performance is very silly for the most part, and it's played for laughs, and I largely didn't like it. But and I'm trying to remember who else is in this movie. Maybe nobody else is in this movie. I don't know. Characters from other parts of the Thor franchise do make appearances, but to discuss what those appearances are would be spoilers, so I'm going to avoid that. I guess, I don't know, on the whole, and I've reached the I'm repeating myself phase of the review, but it's fine. It's not bad, but it's not particularly good. It doesn't stick with me. But that's kind of okay in a way that, again, these Marvel movies are so episodic. Like, for example, I watch a lot of garbage network programming. I watch a lot of NCIS. I watch the FBI's. I watch all that CBS stuff. And those episodes just wash over me. And I feel like that's kind of the same thing with these Marvel movies. It's like, it's a cool episode, but I'm not going to go back to any of this stuff. Last thing, and this is probably my most provocative hot take, and only like 3 people are going to get this. But this movie is Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, the William Shatner directed one. And I can't tell you exactly why, but if you know that movie, you can already start kind of doing the calculus of what I'm talking about. But then when you watch it, and then you watch the whole movie, you're going to be like, holy smokes, Mike was right. This is Star Trek V. And because it is in a lot of ways. in a lot of ways, too many ways that's really kind of uncomfortable. I mean, what does God need with a starship? And that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Thanks for hanging out with me. And if you want to check out any of my other shows, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, TuneIn, or wherever the heck else you listen to the podcast. And subscribe to the YouTube channel. Oh, newsflash! I have updated the YouTube channel recently to where now it looks a little more polished and a little more finished. I actually put like a banner up there, courtesy of my dude Andy, doing those Transformers the movie related themed logos for me. So it looks a little more clean. I've created some playlists for the live streams and things like that. Anyway, go check out the YouTube channel. And you can follow me on all those social medias. I am at Mike Seibert Radio. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and I'm pretty active on all of those. You can send me an email, MikeSeibertRadio@gmail.com, and you can become a Mike Cybertronian and you can join the MSRP Friends and Fans Facebook group, and where you can converse with other fans and friends of the show there. Like, share, rate, and review the show wherever you find it, and let me know what you like and what you'd like to hear more of in the future. For Mike Seibert Radio, my name is Mike, and until next time, tell all are one. Make good choices.